Having a dope life means we gotta stop being afraid to say that we want a dope life. We gotta stop whispering that shit like it's a secret that we want absolute dopeness over our lives. And one of the things that I noticed about myself and I noticed about the other women that I know is that we're not confused about the life that we want. Child, no, we're fully aware of the life that we want. We know that we want absolute dopeness. We want know that we want the creme de la creme, but we just haven't had the opportunity. Maybe we just haven't had the invitation to say that shit out loud yet. And this is where I bring it back to hip hop because the good sis has always been teaching us lessons because hip hop came into the place. She came into the building and she had this way about making and taking up space. She made space for herself in a world that did not welcome her with open arms. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. Because they did not see her genius. They did not value her storytelling. They did not understand how she became the soundtrack to a marginalized group of people who've been repping heavy for her ever since. You know, they damn sure didn't think that the good sis was going to be around for 50 plus years, yet here we are. Here we are. And she never asked for permission. She just showed up. She showed up, she put in that work, and she showed out consistently. She never faltered. She never looked back. And because of her audacity to be delusional about the impact that she was going to have on the world, we now have the blueprint to what it is to be dope. She gave it to us. Like, we don't even have to think about it. It's right there. You know, she showed us that we don't need permission to be visionaries, especially visionaries over our own lives. We don't need permission for that. And we damn sure don't need permission to believe in our vision. We don't need the world to believe in our vision because it's none of their business. Mm-mm. Because when the world tries to understand your vision and what you have for your life, it likes to tell us that we're being too big with it. We don't care what they think. And here's the thing, I get it because the thought of moving with that type of delusion and audacity is terrifying. You know, what if the vision that the little brown girl inside of you gave you that is waiting for you to just to claim it? What if it feels too big? What if it feels too big? And I got to tell you, that shit is normal. It's normal because we have been conditioned. We have been conditioned from generations of the women before us to be realistic. Yeah. But if we truly are who our ancestors dreamt that we could be, who our grandmothers prayed for us to be, we got to take that first step. Yeah, we got to be able to take the step that they weren't able to take so that the brown girls that come after us or the brown girls that come from us, that they don't have to wait as long as we did in order to be their dopest version of themselves. You know, and so it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to the legacy of black women and the brown women come after us that we got to take that first step. And I know it sounds simple when I say it, take a first step, but it's the foundation to everything. And that first step is you got to name that shit. And you can't just name that shit. You got to name that shit with authority. You got to name that shit with audacity. We got to get so comfortable with naming our lives that we don't have no choice but to start seeing it as ours. We got to see ourselves in the life that we envision and everything. And like I told y'all before, I told y'all in the first video I did that I'm doing this work anyway. So you may as well come with me. You may as well be delusional with your good sis anyway. So before I move on, let me tell you about the homework that the good Professor J. Cole gave us, because this week is about getting comfortable with naming our lives. That's what this week is all about. And again, that sounds simple, but when it comes to being delusional, we always got to go bigger. You know, we have to name the life that we want to be delusional about. So this is what we're going to do this week. I need y'all to pull out your journals, your notepads, whatever it is, however you process information and do your work. I need you to do that. Pause it if you have to, because we're going to name the life that we actually want. But here's the catch. Okay, listen. This is the catch. Don't be lazy. Nah, sis, don't be lazy. And when I say don't be lazy, you can't say general shit like, I want to be rich, or I want a good husband. Child, that is literally the fastest way to end up rich and still stress the hell out. No, I want you to be detailed about the life that you're envisioning for yourself, because we didn't take the time. Like, if you didn't take the time and you get bullshit life because you didn't take the time to define what that life looks like to you, come on now, don't be lazy, because naming this life isn't about a list of things. It's the bigger stuff. It's how you want to feel in this life. What do you want to experience in this life? Who are you going to have around you in this life? Who's going to have access to you? Who's going to be left behind? What are you going to enjoy? What are you not going to tolerate? What are you going to say, you know what, I can still negotiate on that one? And most importantly, who do you have to be in order to enjoy this life, to actually live this life, to not be afraid that you're going to waste this life? Who do you have to be? And that is how we name our lives. Because once we write it all down, once we write all of it out and we put it in as much detail as we can possibly put it, I want you to look at that life that you created for yourself, the life that you named for yourself, the life that you were like, this is it. And then I want you to give it a name like a soundtrack. I don't care if you name that like Rich in Peace and Paid in Full. I need you to name it something. It has to be something that hits with you, that every time you look at it, you be like, oh, this is it. Because that name, whatever you name that soundtrack to your life, that becomes your anchor. Yeah. And when life starts to life, and because that's a guarantee that we have, life will dog walk our asses in a second. And when things start to feel off and you start to feel tired and you want to start negotiating with the dream or the vision that you have for ourselves, that name, that name is going to remind us who we decided to be. That name is going to remind us of who we decided to be before we try to renegotiate that decision. So instead of operating from a place of fear or a place of being realistic and asking yourself, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? I want you to pause. I want you to stop, and I want you to think as if you are already her. And I want you to say, what would she do right now? And this is where you got to make that shit real, yo. You got to make it real for yourself, because we're not just naming a dream. We're not just naming something that we're going to put on a vision board, or we're going to put some note cards around the house. No, we are naming our actual lives. We are going to talk about, how do you feel in the body that is living that life? What does love feel like for you in that life? What does money look like for you in that life? Do you see where I'm going with this? You are going to envision yourself and redefine everything in that life. Listen, break it down to, what does a random Tuesday look like in that life? Because it's not always about the big moments that make lives dope. It's about the everyday shit. It's about the everyday things that you want to experience in that life. Break it down to what makes it different. That's what we're doing this week. We're naming it. And I'm gonna leave you with this, because of the way that hip hop, because of the way that she was delusional, because of how she moved, she built a whole culture. She built a culture that we couldn't imagine living without today. So what would happen? Or what would happen if you and I, if we all moved with that same energy in our own lives? And so I say, name that shit and see what starts to shift when we do. That's all I got for y'all today. It is the Brown Girl, and this is another episode of Miseducation of the Brown Girl. And when I tell you, this season of Delusion, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I already did some of the homework and it had me in tears. So grab your tissue when you do that shit, because it's just seeing yourself differently. It feels different. It feels good, and sometimes it's scary. Sometimes it is heart wrenching that it took so long for us to actually want to name it. But today I'm giving everyone their permission slips to name that shit. That is your homework. That is what is due next Friday. So I will talk to you later. And hey, listen, if you like the idea of being in your own delusional era and you want to bring your friends with you, like, follow, share, and subscribe. All right, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.